Hello, my name is Marcos Gonzalez, and I am serving as the Director of Trauma-Informed Education at Chicago Jesuit Academy. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm very grateful to be here with you today. As we begin this time, I'd like to ground us by acknowledging the indigenous communities on the land that we inhabit. I greet you from Chicago, where I want to honor the Council of the Three Fires, the tribes of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi nations. During this teach-in, we'll move through opportunities to challenge the legacy of stolen land and stolen lives as we ground ourselves in the prophetic resilience of these indigenous communities and the many who have gone before us. We honor them as we take this time to grow, to learn, and to seek greater justice. I'm honored to be breaking open this year's theme, Prophetic Resilience, Breaking Down, Building Up. The Ignatian Family Teach-In roots itself in the history and legacy of those who have lived their lives in this prophetic and resilient way. For many of you may or may not know that the history takes its root from the Salvadoran Civil War, where there were many who were fighting the oppression that existed in that time. And the strongest voices were those who were seeking to challenge these elements of oppression. Those voices were largely coming from the church. The Jesuits who were at the University of Central America were largely challenging and utilizing the power that resided within the faith and the institution. They had deep recognition of their power, and they claimed that power for social change at the cost of their lives. Their death served as a catalyst for change. And for 30 years, there have been gatherings that have been happening here through the Ignatian Solidarity Network, through the Ignatian Family Teach-In. Those gatherings first started outside the gates of the School of the Americas, where the soldiers who killed the Jesuit martyrs and many in the Salvadoran Civil War were trained. There was a tent that many gathered in. Over the years, that tent has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Now to this year, our largest gathering, this large virtual tent that we find ourselves in. And yet we find ourselves in a unique moment, virtually in what is this socially distant reality as a result of these pandemics that we find ourselves in. And like the many martyrs of El Salvador, we have also been called to a moment of social change by the deaths of those who have been taken from us this summer. We remember them by name: Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many others whose lives were so early taken. And we gather in a way desiring for greater justice, a justice that still is yet to be lived. And their lives serve as another reminder of the need for our social change, another catalyst for us. So we find ourselves in the pandemics of COVID-19 and systemic racism. We recognize that this moment is unique and invites us to reflect more critically. We exist within a nation that can feel so polarized and divided. We find ourselves in an earth that seems under attack as we try to make sense of the climate change and its many effects. We have many sisters and brothers who, living in our nation, still in fear for unknowing of what our immigration system will provide for them in the thoughts of their future. We think particularly of the many asylees, refugees who are coming to our country. We think of those who are here, who have DACA, and the many who haven't had the opportunity to receive such protections as DACA. All of these components of the reality that we find ourselves in, much like the legacy of the martyrs of El Salvador, call us to reflect on the question of how can we be a part of this moment of change that our nation so desperately needs. We have the witness of their prophetic resilience, and so we too are invited to that prophetic resilience by breaking down the barriers that divide us, We move into this moment of the teach-in to think about what is that keeping me from my own freedom? What is it that is keeping from the freedom of those that are around me? And how can I be a part of breaking down those things that separate us? Because there is far more that unites us than separates us. We call to mind the way that we can take this moment to break down those barriers so we can begin to build up. And by building up, we build up a new way of being. I've often reflected on this current moment as we look back and we talk about what normal has been, because for many, this hasn't been normal. And so we have an opportunity now to reflect on a way of reimagining, a way of being with one another in true relationship, in a true essence of kinship. In particular, you as youth have such power and potential because the future is in your hands. The many ways in which young people have been the leaders of this current moment of seeking greater justice. On the streets, at peaceful protests, gathering, raising your voices on social media, challenging the ways in which we look at the world. Your eyes can allow us to reimagine the way that we will be. And so as we gather this week in this moment of rising to the invitation to live prophetically, to allow our resilience to carry us through like our ancestors have. We built up the way in which we can imagine our world to be. And in that, we know that there is such a desperate need for hope, and our hope rests in you. You who will be our future, you who will be our guides, you who will provide us the opportunity to be able to reimagine the ways that we can be. I hope that throughout this week, you can allow yourself to reflect on what role you will play, how you are being called, the Spirit's moving in you to respond to our current needs so that we can be a part of the healing, so that we can be collectively in this community of kinship that allows us to live our lives in hope. I thank you for taking the time to engage this week. And I hope that you can carry the lessons that you have been learning here with your fellow community mates, with your fellow classmates, and with all those that you are surrounded as you move forward. We thank you for the opportunity to engage this moment of needing such critical change and the ways in which you will provide that change in the steps that you take. Thank you.